Hello and welcome. I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory in for Hashtag of the U. It's Friday, December 23rd. This is Africa 54.
Rwanda denies supporting the M23 armed group in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. But a leaked report by independent United Nations experts say otherwise. Gerald Mwangwe, who shares his hopes that injectable drugs will come to Uganda soon to make major changes in his HIV treatment. And in today's entertainment report, Music Time in Africa's host, Heather Maxwell, wraps up the year with a top 10 countdown of Africa's top hits from 2022. All this and more on today's Africa 54.
Rwanda denies supporting M23 in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. However, a leaked report by a group of independent United Nations experts says Rwanda's army engaged in military operations against Congo. Paul Ndiho explains.
Rwanda's army was involved in military operations against Congo's military in the country's troubled east, according to a leaked report by a group of independent UN officials seen by the media on Thursday. The experts said there was substantial evidence that the Rwandan army directly intervened in Congo's fight against M23 rebels and that it had supported the group with weapons, ammunition, and uniforms. A Rwandan spokesman denies his government supported the rebels and declined to comment on specific allegations until the findings were formally published.
This report was based on testimonies, allegedly based on videos we were never shown and watched. Those documents may be made available when the report is officially released. Today, if we have not seen the material evidence, it isn't easy to take a position as long as we have not examined this so-called evidence, because it says one thing and then the opposite.
The report comes as DRC has repeatedly accused Rwanda of backing M23. The militia has captured thirds of territory in the Congo's east since it emerged from dormancy last year.
We need the report to be officially released. We need to analyze it, look at the evidence that has been mentioned, and be allowed to respond. Right now, we are only relying on leaks.
The United States and France, among other Western countries, agree with Congo's assessment that Rwanda has backed M23. According to the leaked report, Rwanda's military intervened to reinforce M23 and combat the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, a descendant of Rwandan Hutu extremists group that carried out the 1994 Tutsi genocide in Rwanda. Rwanda allegedly provided troops reinforcements to the M23 for specific operations, in particular when these were aimed at seizing strategic towns and areas. According to the report, Rwandan troops also led joint attacks with M23 fighters against the Congolese positions in May. The 236-page document for the UN Security Council is expected to be published in the coming days. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council unanimously adopted 2 resolutions. One renewing the mandate of the UN Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for 1 year, also known as MONUSCO, and another lifting the notification requirement under the arms embargo. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Well, staying in the same area ever since Gerard Mwanga tested positive for HIV eight years ago, keeping his viral load in check has meant carrying around vials of pills while dodging the stigma his condition could invite for a gay man in Uganda. Olivia Chan reports.
Gerald Mwanga tested positive for HIV 8 years ago. To keep his viral load in check, he has to carry around vials of pills for his daily treatment regimen, while dodging the stigma this could mean for a gay man in Uganda. But he hopes this could soon change thanks to an injectable treatment that only needs to be taken once every 2 months.
I heard of that coming injectable HIV treatment, and I think it will be so perfect if the doctors here in Uganda follow the procedures of giving it to some people. Reason being, how it's going to be very important to my community, the LGBTI community.
In October last year, about 200 patients in Uganda began a trial of a World Health Organization approved injection containing the drugs cabotegravir or Cab-LA and ripivirine. Results are due in 2024. The treatment, developed by British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline, is the first non-pill option against HIV, and studies have shown it even outperforms the efficacy of oral pills, which Mwonge has been taking.
Also, being with these drugs, you have to take them every day. And if you're taking them at exactly 9 a.m., it should be that way until you die.
He says the strict regimen of taking the pills messes with his head. Mwonge, who is not among the patients in the trial, said the new injectable treatment option could help to reduce the stigma HIV patients suffer, particularly gay men like himself. Homosexuality is illegal in Uganda, and gay people often face arrest, ostracism, and violence at the hands of law enforcement or local vigilantes. In Uganda, at least 1.4 million people live with HIV/AIDS.
Well, that was Olivia Chan of Reuters reporting. Well, the African Union ambassador to the United States, Hilda Sukamafudze, says African countries have the right to pursue a variety of sources for foreign direct investment. Eddie Adams, host of VOA Straight Talk Africa, spoke to Sukamafudze about the opportunities for African nations from the strategic competition between the U.S. and China.
China still remains ranked as the largest investor in Africa, the United States second, of course. What would you like to see? Would you like to see the U.S. overtake China?
U.S. has to step up to go into this competition. They have to step up. The need of Africa, the needs of Africa, they do not look at where is the investor coming from. We look everywhere for the best, what we can put together for our people. If we are looking to have our people employed, and we have FDI coming from another corner of the world, we kind of go towards that. And they say, this is good for our people. And I would say, Africa is vast. We can fit in all of us, the world over.
There's room for all competitors.
There's room for all competitors. I want US to step up.
Would you say there is a disconnect in how Africans see this versus perhaps how Americans see this relationship? There's three parts to this relationship: Africa, African countries, China, and the United States.
That is the gap I'm working on, reducing. To say the way the US sees us, the way the people on the continent see the US. I'm not going to talk about, I'm here for US-Africa relations. And I will tell you of the US-Africa relations. And that's the gap I'm trying to narrow and say good things are happening in Africa. We have 60% of people who are younger than 25 years. And what does it mean tomorrow? No, good things have to be done on the African continent. You cannot make decisions of the world without the contribution of Africa, without the involvement of the leadership of Africa. As much as Africa is demanding a seat at the table of the world's decisions, Africa has shown it can play, it can be there. This comes with the systems that we've put together of the Agenda 2063 to say this is what we want as Africa. You're not just coming in and deciding on what you want to give Africa. You're coming in and looking at that agenda in the Agenda 2063 and its flagships and saying, yes, in this area of infrastructure, we can work with Africa. I'm seeing that coming from the US, where they are introducing, making sure CCA, Corporate Council of Africa, and who are rallying business leadership on the ground here in the US to say, Africa is open for business, guys. Don't be left out. Don't do too much bureaucracy.
Well, that was the African Union ambassador to the United States, Hilda Sukamafutse, speaking to Hayde Adams, host of Viewers Straight Talk Africa. Now, the recently concluded U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit here in Washington, D.C. was a big media story for both international media like Voice of America, as well as the African diaspora media. For more about the coverage and the role of diaspora media, I'm joined in studio by Ndiho Fashanu, founder of the African Network TV, or TAN TV. Ndiho, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me, Vincent.
So very quickly, first, you covered this U.S.-Africa summit here. Could you share with us what your approach was as a diaspora-based digital media?
I love how you phrase it, diaspora-based digital media, because that's what we are at TAN TV. We are a media company catering to the African and Black multicultural diaspora in the U.S. And what we found out is that the diaspora in the U.S., the Africans and the Caribbeans, there's not a mainstream media that is telling our stories. And so it would surprise you that even something that was as big, right, as the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit that happened, a lot of people in our communities did not know about it. They weren't even aware. Like I talked to some friends in New York, they were not even aware that the summit was happening. So what we did in terms of covering was we created a comprehensive guide that highlighted some of the key events that were happening and also some of the side events. Because mind you, not everyone had access to attend, the events like the African Diaspora Leaders Forum, the Innovators Gathering that happened at the State Department. It wasn't very much accessible to a lot of people. So what we did was we created a guide that really informed those people who couldn't attend the summit. And so that guide reached over 1,000 people.
Oh, great. Now, yes. you talk also about trying to tell positive stories about Africans. Well, why did you think you need to do that, and how do you tell those stories?
Yeah, so when it comes to the narrative, right, we've all known, now it's getting better because of the entertainment, right, the music industry that is booming. But when it comes to telling our stories, there's been this negative narrative that's penetrated media. And you know that when it comes to media, how people, whatever you say in the media is how people start relating to individuals, right? So what we understood with TAN TV is that we are here to change that negative narrative and to increase the positive representation. Because the evolution of Black representation on American TV alone has come a long way in history. One thing I always say is that Black storytelling is not monolithic, right? And so there's diversity even within our Black communities. And what we're trying to do with TAN TV is tell those multiculturally relevant stories.
Yeah. Some have wondered whether there is a convergence between those who are living on the continent right now and those of us who are here, especially when it comes to storytelling. How are you able to create that, if you're able?
Yeah, you mean to sort of bridge the gap? Yeah. I'll give an example. I think it was a few years back, right, the NSAS movement that happened in Nigeria. It was a big movement. Police brutality in Nigeria was a big issue. Even though we are diaspora-focused stories, you have about 2 million African immigrants that have familiar ties with home, that are living in the United States, and the voices at the same time, they matter. So we still have connection to the continent. So using the NSAS as an example, what we did was we were able to cover the protests that happened in DC. And that was a big protest that Nigerians took to the embassy in Washington, DC. And so we were able to cover that. And we were one of the only few media that really gave a voice to diasporans over here that were highlighting and putting putting pressure on the government back in the continent. So that's just a simple example of how we cover our stories. We have an editorial platform, and then next year we're launching TAN TV as a streaming over-the-top media as well.
Doing a good job, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to roll out. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Adedayo Fashanu is the founder of TAN TV. Well, still to come, the U.S. faces a shortage of red-suited holiday performers. Don't go away.
As the world continues to experience a post-COVID global recession and food prices constantly rising, what do small-scale vendors such as street food vendors do to stay afloat? In Africa, women are known to be the drivers of the informal economy, and street food vending is one of the trades in which they excel. This week, we speak to women vendors and look at the challenges they face and how they try to overcome them. All of that and more on this week's episode of Our Voices. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
From around the world, let's go.
In other news, Shell says it will pay $15.9 million to Nigerian farmers to compensate them for damage from pipeline leaks after reaching a deal with the Dutch environmental group helping the affected communities. The African Union and the Economic Community of West African States are condemning an alleged coup attempt in Gambia. The government says it arrested 4 people planning to overthrow President Adama Barrow. And President Cyril Ramaphosa's re-election as leader of South Africa's ruling party has strengthened his hold on power, but vocal opponents say the path to much-needed reforms will remain a rocky one. But after a year-and-a-half-long investigation and more than 1,000 witnesses, U.S. investigators allege former President Donald Trump played a key role in encouraging the January 6, 2021 attempt to overthrow the results of the 2020 election. VOA's Catherine Gibson has more.
Nearly 2 years after the worst attack on the U.S. Capitol in 2 centuries, U.S. lawmakers have released their final report on the events of that day, documenting allegations former President Donald Trump actively encouraged the insurrection.
For 187 minutes, he actively disregarded his constitutional obligation to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. As we've established through months of investigation, that is because the mob wanted what President Trump wanted, to impede the peaceful transition of power.
The report contains previously unreleased testimony and documents.
For the public writ large to really be able to go back to this record and view it, in very similar ways that we discuss the report by the 9/11 Commission, right? It's a piece of history. It's a historical record that is meant to preserve as closely as possible the facts of that day.
Based on the evidence gathered, the committee has referred Trump to the U.S. Department of Justice on multiple criminal charges, the first time that has happened in American history.
One of the core principles of the American democratic system that has made it as stable as it is that the new president and the government that the new president operates does not generally go after the former president. And so the idea that you would try to prosecute a former president is really unknown in American history. And the fact that this has gone forward really demonstrates how extreme former President Trump's actions were.
Trump has criticized the committee throughout its investigation and said Monday the referrals strengthen him.
We need angry patriots to fill the House, guys. Come on, let's go.
More than 930 individuals have faced prosecution for their involvement in the attack, and while the report documents many expressing regret for their involvement, extremist analysts say those movements are still gathering strength.
What you see from the Oath Keepers organization and the Proud Boys today are organizations that are more steeped than ever in their conspiracy theories and in their views around the events of January 6th, more specifically.
The report also documents numerous failures by law enforcement and intelligence agencies to anticipate the threat posed by domestic extremists.
We have a much greater risk that domestic terrorists, people who really do want to overthrow the American political system, exist in large numbers in the United States. And they don't accept the rule of law, they don't accept facts, they don't accept election results, and they're willing to take up arms against the United States.
The release of the report marks the conclusion of the committee's work. The U.S. Justice Department is conducting its own investigation into the events of January 6th. That will likely influence the decision on whether to pursue charges against Trump. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
And you're right, it's the last Friday of 2022. And for our entertainment this week, it looks like Heather Maxwell has an annual report of sorts. What's the news, Heather?
Well, Vincent, hi. Hello, everyone. The news is I've concluded my annual report on the most popular Pan-African music hits. It's called, well, it's a tough call because normally I would have at least 54 songs to represent every African country, but we don't have that much time, so here's what made the cut.
Are you ready now?
Are you ready for my top 10 best African songs of 2022? Let's hit it then. Starting out at number 10, Ashobi by Drizzy Leak featuring Idris Elba from Sierra Leone. You better go fenny Ashobi. I had a necessarily Ashobi. Nobody know the Lenny Ashobi. So you ain't not be know the Ashobi. Number 9 is Find a Friend by Teddy Ride from LIB. And number 8, Away by Yo Maps from Zambia.
They want me down, they want me suffer, they want me gone, but I'm a biggie man, brother. They wanna see me cry, don't know why. Anyway, Mulungu sama gonna know lie. They want me down.
Number 7 is Bloqué by Fally Ipupa from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Allons-y, on n'a peur de rien, on est confiant. Et moi j'ai un mental d'acier comme un warrior. Frère, ils sont là-bas.
And number 6 is Something by Jackie from Ghana.
It's like there's something running down, down, down below. When you do me like this, and I really wanna say nice things, just go show your door. Oh, you know.
Number 5, Makelo Megalou by Minal from Morocco. Number 4, Dali Ngwe by Wanitwa Moss and Master KG from South Africa. Number 3 is Mwambieni by Zuchu from Tanzania. Now, number 2 is Inauma by Bien Aimé Alusa from Kenya. And my number 1 top African song of 2022, You.
Thank you very much, Heather. Now, the ho-ho-hos of Christmas are not as plentiful this year in the United States as the country faces a shortage of Santa Claus performers. Aaron Brennan reports from New York City.
The bright lights of Christmas twinkle across the city of New York. Department stores have come alive with elaborate holiday window displays, drawing large crowds of shoppers. All is merry and bright, except for many empty red chairs where Santa traditionally greets children. The United States is seeing an unprecedented shortage of Santa Claus performers.
The shortage that we're seeing is due to demand, whether it be for a home visit all the way through a mall visit. Our demand is up over 20% from last year and up over 120% from pre-pandemic levels. For every Santa that reaches out to us that wants to be a Santa Claus entertainer, we get 20 customers reaching out to us.
Alan says that in addition to an increase in demand, COVID has also had a real effect on the supply of Santa Clauses.
During 2020 and 2021, COVID was particularly hard on the Santa Claus community. So we lost several hundred Santa Claus entertainers. We think about 10% of the Santa Claus community during those last couple of years, either due to COVID or deciding to hang up the red coat.
But some lucky communities were able to book a Santa Claus this season, including this neighborhood in Middletown, New Jersey.
We're very lucky, very blessed to have somebody who was willing to come down and make this special event for our kids. We know it's tough to find folks these days, and we're really grateful. It's been a lot of fun.
And the little partygoers have their own reasons for wanting to speak with Santa.
There's a lot of presents that your parents don't let you buy because it might be too expensive, but you could always count on Santa to get it.
And Santas are happy to give the little ones a hand, except this year they feel particularly slammed.
I got 20 requests today that I had to turn down because I'm already booked for certain times. In the last 2 months, I have declined 580. I checked this morning, 580 requests, and it breaks your heart.
To combat this Santa shortage, organizations like the Worldwide Santa Claus Network are ramping up education programs to help inspire others to join the Santa Claus family.
So I created a bunch of classes and free ebooks for people that think, you know what, maybe it'd be fun to portray Santa, and decide whether or not this is right for them. So yeah, I'm on a big mission to recruit people with big hearts to give old Santa a hand.
With these outreach efforts, one can only hope that next year will bring sleighs of Santas ready to celebrate the holidays. Aaron Rainin for VOA News, New York City.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.